Today, I am so excited to be looking at a camera that not only have I been waiting years for, but also pretty much everybody in the filmmaking community. Today, we are taking our first look at the new Sony A7S III. A few weeks back, we were kindly invited down to Sony HQ to get our hands on the camera for a few hours, and we have some thoughts. The camera we saw was an early pre-production unit, so stuff could possibly change. However, Sony is not messing about with everything they have managed to squeeze into this camera. Before we get into the camera and its specs, let's talk about its price. The A7S III comes in at £3,800 or roughly $3,167 excluding VAT. That's about the same price as the A7R Mark IV, and I think it's priced very well considering what it offers in the current market. Production units should be hitting end users' hands in September. This camera may be in a stills body, but Sony is clearly pitching it for video as it features some really impressive improvements over the previous alpha cameras. Let's start off taking a look at the new body design. The body and build quality have been improved massively. The camera is a decent amount larger than the previous A7 cameras, and it really does feel nice in the hand now. The bulkier grip feels so much better to grab onto now versus the last generation. It also features the same dust and moisture resistance as the A7R Mark IV and A9 Mark II. With the new body comes a new cooling system also, and heat dissipation is up to 5 times more effective than previous models. There are no other limits to the recording time, so you should be able to roll for as long as you want pretty much. Though, we need to test this obviously. On the front of the camera, you have the same E-mount as you expect from Sony. This means access to the huge range of E-mount lenses from Sony and third-party brands, as well as the ability to adapt a huge percentage of any lens ever made onto the front due to the 18mm flange. So yeah, Sony using this mount again makes a lot of sense, and there are some fantastic accessories out there for it. Behind the E-mount sits the A7S III's brand new backside illuminated Exmor R full frame 36x24mm sensor, and features a new processor that Sony are calling the Bionz XR, which is approximately 8 times faster than the current. Sony are touting it to have more dynamic range than the previous A7s and perform just as well, if not better, when it comes to low light, which if true, would be an incredible achievement. The sensor isn't pixel binning or line skipping at all in any of the recording formats, which is amazing to hear. When shooting in S-Log3, the sensor should be able to capture 15 stops of dynamic range, which is awesome. You can shoot as low as ISO 640 without toggling on the extended ISO ranges, and a max ISO of 409,600. Sony haven't released the native ISO yet. I really would like to test this properly, but from what we managed to see in the person, the camera does look like it performs very well. The A7S series has always had solid dynamic range and low light performance, so I'm confident that this new camera is going to deliver that. Sony have also stated that rolling shutter has been improved massively, in fact by almost 3 times over the performance of the A7S Mark II. This is because of the introduction of an anti-distortion shutter. In person, it looked really good, but again, we need to test this more in depth, and it will be in our more in-depth review. On the top, the dials and buttons have also been improved. Both the mode dial and exposure compensation dial now have locking buttons, and there is now a third wheel right where your thumb sits. Partner that with the bigger and more tactile buttons, and this now makes the A7S Mark III operate more like a more larger DSLR camera, which is only a good thing. There is now also a dedicated record button on the top of the camera, instead of at the back. I think this is much better. The A7S III features the same updated MI shoe as the A7R Mark IV, which allows you to use the updated XLR-K3M, which allows both analog and digital audio and allows you to capture up to 4 channels of audio. I really want to see how this camera handles monitoring and adjusting these 4 channels of audio, but we didn't have a K3M to test while we had access to the camera. However, the K3M has hardware controls for each of the 3 inputs on there, so that may be the way to do it. On the bottom, you have the battery slot, which takes the same NPA-Z100s as the Sony A7 Mark III. This means you get roughly 60% more out of each battery versus the S2, which you had to carry around an absolute truckload of batteries for because of how small the batteries were. In practice, this should give you around 95 minutes of recording time on a single battery or 600 photographs. However, for people wanting to rig the camera up and get some better battery life, I'm sure there will be a range of options to hit the market. However, Hawkwood's and Wooden Camera already have dummy NPA-Z100 to DTAP cables, which you'll be able to use with the A7S Mark III to power it via any DTAP battery source you'd like to use. Sony also makes the NPA-MQZ1K multi-battery adapter. This allows you to do a huge range of things. It allows you to charge 4 FZ100 batteries at once. It charges them individually, starting with the lowest charged. You can power this unit via the DC port or via the micro USB port. It also has 2 USB outputs in case you need to charge anything while traveling or on set. However, its biggest feature is the dummy battery output. This allows you to use it with either cameras that take the NPA-Z100 or the last generation FW50 battery. Making it backwards compatible is a nice touch. The unit has been designed for multiple use cases, and one case I think Sony have done a good job designing it for is video. Not only will it give you 4 times the battery life, but it's also very easy to mount onto tripod or shoulder rigs because of the array of 1/4-inch threads across the body and the ability to take off the sides of the unit to reduce its overall footprint. This accessory hasn't seen anywhere near the love it should have since its release. However, I think for some A7S III owners, this could be an awesome option. Though it is a tad on the pricey side, so if you are looking for something a bit more affordable, Blind Spot Gear's Junkie could be a good option too. We looked at this last year in a video, which you can check out here. Other than the battery slot, you have a single 1/4-inch thread, and that's it. I really wish Still's camera designers would add a second 1/4-inch thread onto the bottom of these cameras, as it will make rigging them so much more robust, but I do understand size and internal design may be the limitation here. On the left of the camera, you have a good range of I/O, a full-size HDMI, which we will come back to, a USB-C port, micro USB, 3.5mm input and a 3.5mm headphone output. One little detail I really like about this is the flaps covering the ports. These are so much more sturdy now than the last generation, and they now open in such a way that you shouldn't be blocking any of the ports with them when they're all open. They also don't flap around like the last ones do, they're much more robust. The camera also comes with a port connector lock, which fits really nicely onto the side of the camera. Back to that HDMI port. Not only is it full size, which is awesome to see from Sony, but it can also output 16-bit RAW at 4K 50 or 60p. This is awesome to hear, and I'm really excited to see the image out of the camera when hooked up to an external recorder. This is a first for Sony mirrorless cameras, and given the fairly conservative data rates of the internal codecs, this could be a killer feature for a lot of people. On the right, behind this solid door, you have a dual card slot, which can take 2 types of media. Each one of the slots is the same and can take either an SD card or a CFexpress Type A card. It's awesome to have the option to use either. For those who aren't aware, CFexpress is a very new type of media. It was announced back in 2019. They released 3 different versions of it, A, B and C. A is what this camera uses and is much smaller than B and C. It also has the lowest maximum data rate of around 1GB per second due to its single PCIe lane. B is what some other cameras on the market are currently using, like the C300 Mark III. And in R5, this uses the same form factor as the CFexpress 1 card from 2017, but has had its NVMe Express protocol updated to 1.3. This B form factor has a maximum data rate of roughly 2GB per second and is slightly larger than A. C was introduced in 2019 with A and is the fastest in the family, with a max data rate of around 4GB per second, which is made possible by its quad-channel PCIe. However, it is much larger than A and B, so again, if you decide to get this camera, make sure you're picking up the A version of CFexpress, otherwise you can have trouble getting them to fit. However, you can record a huge portion of the formats to SD, with XAVC-SI 4K at 100 or 120 frames per second in slow and quick mode being the only one that requires a CFexpress card. Otherwise, you can pick up a V90 SD card and record every other codec, which is amazing. I could see a lot of people investing into a couple of V90 cards for their primary formats, and then a single CFexpress card for when 4K 120p all-I is required. With the announcement of this camera, Sony have also announced both an 80GB and a 160GB CFexpress Type A card. So if you do want to capture all codecs without concern, these are your only options currently. On the back, there is a whole lot going on. Not only do you have a redesign in terms of the layout, but also the size of the buttons. I do wish, however, that the menu button was in a slightly different position. The joystick makes a return from the A7 III, and now partnered with the improved AF system, this will make using autofocus precisely and fast so much easier. The bigger button size also means that buttons are much easier to press, which is great for when you're wearing gloves or have the camera up to your eye. You have the regular buttons you would expect from an Alpha Series camera, with a few custom function buttons also. The EVF has seen a massive improvement. This big, beautiful thing is now a 9.44 million dot QXGA OLED viewfinder. It looks absolutely gorgeous, so people who use their viewfinder on their cameras often are going to love it. One feature is the ability to reduce the size of the image in the viewfinder, which is handy for people like me with glasses. The screen has also been improved. The A7S II's screen was notorious for breaking due to the weak mechanism for tilting, and this new mechanism is very similar to the one that was on the ZV-1, which uses a hinge on the left that will allow you to flip the screen out and adjust a decent amount. Finally, vloggers can rejoice. The hinge feels solid, and Sony even cut away a little indent at the top right of the screen to make it easy to flip out. That's enough on the body. Let's take a look at the headline features. Inside of the A7S Mark III, you have a few different options for codecs. You have XAVC-HS4K, XAVC-S 4K, XAVC-S HD, XAVC-SI 4K, and XAVC-SI HD. Some of you Sony A7S II shooters will be saying, hey, there's some new codecs here, and you would be correct. You have some of the regular versions of XAVC, but you also now have all-I variants, which are the SI formats, and HS, which are Sony's new H.265 or HEVC versions of XAVC-S. You can shoot a range of frame rates, the highest being in 4K 100 or 120p, which you can do in a few different formats, most impressively being the all-I flavour in 42 10-bit with full autofocus and no pixel binning or line skipping. Sony have also emphasised how important the difference between slow and quick and the regular recording mode is when it comes to bit rates. In slow and quick, you can capture up maximum of 120 frames per second in 4K or 240 frames per second in Full HD. However, audio is not recorded in this mode, so if you need it, you need to be shooting in the regular mode. You have a great range of different formats depending on your needs, and the fact you are getting these all in full frame is amazing. The camera does have a crop mode, however that is only in the HD codecs. However, one way around this could be to use the clear image zoom to punch in to get around the coverage of your lens while in a higher res format. One of the biggest drawbacks of the A7S II was its lack of an internal 10-bit codec, so it's really refreshing to see Sony implement both high quality subsampling and bit depth across a range of formats. This will now mean you don't experience the same limitations of shooting S-Log2 or S-Log3 in an 8-bit codec, unless you choose to, of course. Though given the current market that Sony has come back into, this was a must. However, the fact you can shoot up to 120 frames per second in all-I with autofocus and no crop is still amazing. When it comes to colour and gamma profiles, you have a range of different options. It uses the same picture profile system as the previous Sony Alpha cameras, so you have 10 presets, though you can go in and tweak what you want. You can change your black level, gamma, black gamma, knee, colour mode, saturation, colour phase, colour depth, and detail. You can choose from a huge range of gammas, most noteworthy being 4 flavours of the Cine profile, ITU 709, ITU 709 800%, S-Log2, S-Log3, and 4 versions of HLG. You also have a good range of colour modes such as ITU 709, S-Gamut, S-Gamut 3, S-Gamut 3 Cine, BT 2020, and 709. Once we get our hands on the camera for full review, we'll be going into this in more detail, but these are some great options to have. The A7S III has improved colour and tone matching of S-Gamma3 and S-Gamma3 Cine modes with the ones inside the FX9, which will make it so much easier to match colours and tones between the two cameras. This means anyone looking to pick up the A7S III as a B or C cam to the FX9 should be able to match the two cameras really easily. Unfortunately, there is no S709 or S-Cinetone profiles internally. I've also fed back to Sony that they should add the S-Cinetone mode from the FX9, as it is such a nice straight out of camera look, and it'd be great to easily match the A7S III with the FX9 in a quick turnaround scenario. However, Sony has assured me that both the pro cine and consumer side of Sony have worked together closely on this camera, so the A7S III should match really well with the FX9 or even the Venice. One feature I wish Sony had added was the ability to import LUTs, however you can't currently, which is a bit of a shame, but there are view assist modes when you're shooting in log. As well as picture profiles, there are also creative look profiles. You have 10 colour profiles, 4 of which are new. The new ones are FL or film light tone, IN or Insta camera tone, VV2 or vivid tone with bright colour, and SH or soft and high key. Within these you can control saturation, contrast, shadow, highlight, fade, sharpness range, and clarity. More choices are only a good thing, but with our full review we will explore these profiles more. The camera also features in-body image stabilization. This is the same as previous Sony Alpha implementations of this, so it's a physical mechanism that is moving the sensor, it's not electronic. This provides 5 stops of stabilization and can be used in tandem with the lens stabilization also. Sony have also added an electronic IS mode, which crops the image by 1.1 times, but will provide even more stabilization. Having both of these options in camera is awesome, and I can't wait to see how these will perform in our tests. It draws influence from what the A7R IV and A7 III could do, but even better. It now features 759 AF points with a combination of contrast and phase detection. These points cover 93% of the frame, provide real-time tracking in video mode, and feature both human and animal eye tracking. When I tested this in person, it was really quick. It really is amazing how far autofocus has come. I really want to put this up against the R5 or R6 from Canon, as these both look like they perform really well, but I'm intrigued to see which brand has the edge. The camera features both Bluetooth as well as 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi, and you can also use this with the Imaging Edge mobile app. The Wi-Fi on the unit we looked at wasn't working, so we couldn't test the app. However, if it's anything like the A7 III, you'll be able to connect the camera over Wi-Fi. This app will then allow you to get a live feed from the camera and also control the camera. The UI is pretty clean and the latency is decent. However, this should be even better with the S Mark III because of the addition of 5 GHz Wi-Fi, which is faster over shorter distances comparatively to 2.4 GHz, which provides a longer range but with slower speeds. Unfortunately, at the moment, the control you get of the camera here is quite limited, so hopefully Sony can integrate more control of the camera's full menu system on the app, but at the moment at least you have an option for monitoring and triggering. Sony has really positioned this camera as videos first and stills second, but if you do want to capture some stills with this camera, 12 megapixels is enough if you're just posting imagery online. The speed of the camera has improved over the S Mark II from 5 to 10 frames per second while shooting with full autofocus now. Sony have also introduced a new compressed file format, HEIF. This format captures 10-bit colour, whereas JPEG is only 8-bit. So you're getting the same great compression of JPEG, but better colour. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a chance to record any footage because the camera is such an early prototype. However, from what I did see, it looks very, very promising. It's difficult to really judge an image from the back of the camera, so we plugged it into a 65-inch TV that we actually shot all of this B-roll against to get a better look. Dynamic range looks solid, colours look really nice, and noise looks so good, even pushing like 50,000 ISO. One thing that it looks like Sony has really improved is colour. And this is one area that people would complain about constantly with the Alpha series cameras. However, with the combination of the improved colour science, better recording formats, and the new sensor, they seem to have made capturing more accurate and saturated colours much better. From images that Sony have shown me, it really does look like the low light colour rendition is really good as well. Overall, I'm very excited to get my hands on a production version of the camera so we can properly run our regular image tests and shoot something creative with it. At the moment, not many accessories have been announced because the camera has only just been revealed. However, there are some key accessories from the previous models that are probably worth talking about. There of course will be a massive range of cages and rigging releasing from the regular hardware manufacturers, which we'll take a look at in our in-depth review. However, lens adapters are something we can speak about now. My go-to recommendation for E-mount nowadays is the Sigma MC11. Not only is it a lot more affordable than the Metabones, but it performs excellent with Sigma's range of lenses, and considering I love and recommend those lenses a lot, the MC11 is a no-brainer. It also performs well with Canon L series glass, which a lot of people have. Nippon has also been making medium format lens focal reducers, so if you want to explore some vintage lenses and achieve some lovely images as a result, then check them out. When it comes to PL mount, there is a huge range of brands such as Focus, Metabones, Wooden Camera, though from our testing, Metabones currently will give you the best results. When it comes to media, as I said earlier, Sony will be doing their own CFexpress Type A cards, though I'd keep your eye online as I'm sure that more will come out soon. In regards to SD cards, it depends on what codecs you're wanting to record. However, if you want to play it safe, I would just suggest picking up a V90 card. My recommendation for that being Angelbird's AV Pro MK2s. Angelbird makes their media specifically with content acquisition in mind. Lastly, let's have a look at the new menu system and some standout features. The menu system has improved quite a bit. However, if you're coming from an existing Alpha series camera, this will take some getting used to. You can also now navigate the menu using touch, which is a first for an Alpha 7 camera. You can see how the addition of this has shaped the design of the menu. The first tab is your My Menu. Here you can add your most used settings. You have the option to add anything from the menu system, so you have a huge range of customization. I love that this is at the top of the menu system, so it's the first thing you access. So now you can easily create your own first menu tab and not have to delve deep unless you really need to. Well done, Sony. After that, you have shooting, exposure color, focus, playback, network, and setup. It's all well laid out, but there are a lot of settings. I don't want to do a full menu breakdown in our first look, so let's just take a look at the menu features that stand out to me. This camera also features the ability to record proxies. With this, you can record low bitrate HD proxy files while recording in any format under 60p. You can record in both XAVC-S HD 1080 or HS HD 720. With the playback performance of H.265, these proxies could come in really handy. Looking at media slots, you can change what is recorded to what media type here. You can change the priority of each slot as well as choose a huge range of recording modes. Standard, simultaneous for stills, simultaneous for video, simultaneous for both, and sort, which is going to allow the camera to write to two separate cards, RAW/JPEG, JPEG/RAW, and stills and video. Camera setting memory isn't a new feature to the Alpha series cameras, but it is a handy one. You can use memory and memory recall to save and load your frequently used settings on your camera, which is a really handy function. You can save 2 profiles on the camera's internal memory and then up to 4 on a piece of media. With this, you can set a huge range of settings, including frame rate and resolution, so you can set some presets and then quickly load those in while shooting. When it comes to exposure tools, you only have a few options, which are similar to those on the previous Alpha 7 cameras. You have the regular EV scale, histogram, which you can cycle through, and lastly you have zebras, which you can customize here. I do wish there was some other tools in camera, but monitors are now so readily available and affordable that this isn't too big of a deal. No matter how much you want to spend, you can pick up a monitor with better exposure tools like Force Color. Portkeys P6 comes in at just £185 and is a solid lightweight budget option with a full range of tools. If you want to watch our overview, you can watch it here. However, with ProRes RAW support coming, the Ninja V could be a very smart investment. Not only is it a great monitor, but being able to shoot ProRes and ProRes RAW externally could be a great option for shooters to have. Sony has stepped up with the custom function buttons here. You have 3 different setups for your custom buttons, which the camera will switch between depending on what mode you're in. You have a set for stills, you have a set for video, and you have a set for playback. You can choose from a huge range of menu settings and rebind pretty much every button on the camera to fully customize exactly what setup you want. We will delve more into this in our full review. The A7S III also features clear image zoom. This allows you to zoom in up to 1.5 times using Sony's awesome clear image zoom, as well as an optical zoom and another digital zoom. There are also settings for adjusting the zoom on the camera and remotely. Sony has introduced a really interesting set of functions here. The remote function can be used with an external remote, but the camera function allows you to set a wide and tele zoom custom function button on the camera to control the zoom on powered servo lenses like the 28-135 I have here. You can then go into the menu further and adjust the zoom speed for when you're in both standby and record mode. This won't work with the FX9 grip, but I have voiced to Sony that this would be an awesome addition for people wanting to shoulder mount their camera. Having the ability to zoom like this on camera now is really interesting. The camera also features shockless white balance for the first time in an Alpha Series camera. Shockless white balance will make the transition when you are changing white balance during a shot look much smoother in case you are changing it while recording on the fly. In previous Alpha Series cameras, pixel mapping has been done automatically at the start of every month. This is normally fine, but not good if you notice a dead pixel just before a shoot. Now, instead of pushing your camera's date forward, you can go into the menu and do this manually, which will make the process so much easier. One weird, interesting feature that shows Sony's influences from their camcorders and bigger cameras in the A7S Mark III is the flexible exposure mode. Under exposure control type, you can toggle this on. This will turn two of the custom function keys into AV Auto and TV Auto. This essentially turns these buttons into auto shutter and auto iris buttons, which could be handy if you're familiar with shooting with cameras like the FS series or Sony camcorders. So a scenario this could be handy, for example, is say you're going from an inside shot to an outside shot and you don't want to mess about with your ISO or anything, you just want your aperture to change. You could literally just assign it so when you go outside you just hit that button and your iris automatically changes. But the rest of the time you're in manual mode. So it gives you a nice balance between a aperture priority mode and manual mode. The A7S Mark III features both an intervalometer for stills internally, and it also features the slow and quick mode, which you can also use to do in-camera time lapses down to 1 frame a second. October 2015 was when the Sony A7S Mark II was released, and we've had to wait nearly 5 years for the Mark III. So much has changed in the past 5 years. Technology has evolved and there are so many awesome cameras on the market to choose from now. So, has Sony come back into the space with a bang? Well, I would say so. I don't think I've been so excited for a camera in years. I love the A7S II, and so did many others, and the fact that this camera is finally out there in the wild and will hopefully be shipping in September is incredible. Just like the FX9 back in November, Sony have clearly listened to their end users and have made a camera that on paper is pretty much perfect for a mirrorless video camera. However, this is only our first look. We cannot wait to get our hands on the camera and shoot some proper tests and something creative with it. Let us know what you want us to shoot with it, what comparisons you'd like to see, and any questions you have in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and for our upcoming A7S Mark III content, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.